What is up, guys? It's your boy, Rick Kakis, and today we gotta talk about something that isn't very pleasant, but is very important right now. According to the Steam charts, Destiny 2's player population is at the lowest point it's ever been. Combine this with the rhetoric you're seeing online on places like Twitter, burnout and frustration with the game is at all-time highs. For me personally, I'm as burnt out as I've ever been. What is causing all this? What are some of the things we can do to alleviate this? Well, that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video, and so let's get started. But just before all that, let's get into something cool. Are you guys ready for the most heartwarming sponsorship ever? Well, this video is brought to you by DPS Games. It's a brand new small studio created by industry veterans. They're working on a new hero vehicle shooter for PC with the codename Arena Clash. Probably gonna change later, but this game looks sweet. You have all these distinct classes: the Behemoth, the Raider, the Specialist, the Hunter. It's 15v15, it's dripping with style, but guys, they don't even want to sell you anything. All they want is for you to go to their Steam page and request access to join in for a multiplayer playtest on November 8th to 11th. They just want to get feedback and test their servers so they can have a good launch. That's it. If that's not the most adorable thing I've ever heard, guys, we owe it to them as gamers to get in there, help these guys out, make this game as good as possible. Heck, I know a lot of AAA developers that should be doing this kind of thing. So guys, absolutely click the link in the description down below. Go help an awesome small studio out. Alright, now guys, first things first, I'm not making this video to simply bash on Destiny 2. I've been playing since the Destiny 1 alpha, and I'm gonna be playing for years and years to come. But constructive criticism is very important for the game to improve. Remember, Destiny 2 launched with no random perk system. I think that alone proves that Bungie doesn't always get it right, and sometimes they do rely on the feedback of the community. Heck, some of the most beloved features in the game are a direct result of community feedback. So again, let's get into those numbers. As you can see right here from the Steam charts, the most recent data shows that only 60,000 players are online. And again, this is the lowest it's ever been. Now, to be clear, 60,000 players specifically on Steam is still pretty darn good. Destiny is far from a completely dead game, but if we look at some other numbers here, so going back in the dip after the Witch Queen expansion, you have 88,000 people. Well, before the Witch Queen expansion, so that's a pretty dead time, you had 78,000 people. And for the next biggest dip, you actually have to go back to April 2020, just before the Season of the Worthy launched, so a very dead time. You have 76,000 people. So think about that. The last big expansion at that time had been Shadowkeep, and I think most of you watching would rank the Witch Queen above Shadowkeep. So the most recent big expansion, the Witch Queen, people enjoyed more, and we're still seeing a lower player count right now. Again, why is that? Well, first of all, the elephant in the room, I think a lot of people are going to say, well, there's so many other games. Modern Warfare 2 just came out, and it's like the biggest Call of Duty release ever. $800 million in a weekend. It's insane. Not to mention you also have Overwatch 2. And there's a new God of War game coming out in a few days. So it's totally understandable that people have taken breaks from Destiny 2 and are playing these other games. But I don't think that's the only factor. I mean, with the Call of Duty example, Modern Warfare 2 is such a success because it's the sequel to the other massive success that was the 2019 Modern Warfare remake. That came out on October 25th, and if we look at the Destiny 2 player population around that time, 195,000 players. So a ton of people. Destiny can clearly compete with Call of Duty. There's not a 100% overlap just because they're both first-person shooters. So I think there's more going on here. And I think a big factor is just that these past couple of seasons have actually been pretty bare bones. And a lot of people may be kind of alarmed by that because wait a minute, didn't subclass 3.0s happen, like all this stuff? Yes, subclass 3.0s were absolutely huge for both this season with Arc 3.0 and last season with Solar 3.0. But it's very important to remember that those took the place of a lot of other content, and those are both free to play additions. If you look at what you actually get for paying $10, it's like Ketchcrash Expeditions and some weapons. That's it. Normally, we get an exotic weapon quest. Something like the Hawkmoon quest or the Dead Man's Tale quest, right? These are pretty expansive missions, often in their own unique areas, and again, those are all included in that $10 seasonal price. There has been none in both this and last season. And I think the reason is simply because of those subclass 3.0s. Undoubtedly, Bungie spent a lot of development time making sure those were good to go. And they are extremely important for the game. Like, I'm not saying Bungie went the wrong direction. Definitely having all of the elemental subclasses viable and usable and having meta builds in all 4 of them is just such an important factor within Destiny. And the way that these subclass 3.0s are laid out with fragments and aspects, it means that Bungie can add more fragments and aspects down the road and really revitalize these different subclasses. So again, making the 3.0 remakes was the right choice, but it came at a cost. And so once the novelty of being able to, throw those Titan grenades and watch them kill everything for you wears off, you're left with less seasonal content than what you usually get. Additionally, I think people are getting fatigued of the current seasonal model. The whole idea of drip feeding you story content week after week, yes, it keeps you coming back longer than if you were able to run through the entire story, the first day or the first week, but it results in many weeks being pretty darn boring. You get a little bit of dialogue, not much is revealed, and almost every single week, it's simply asking you to do the same activities, in this case, Ketchcrash and expeditions, over and over again, stuff you've already been doing, already been farming, just to reveal that next little tidbit of story information. Now, if the seasonal activities are bangers, like menagerie level bangers, that's fine. But again, when it's expeditions, which really just get tiring pretty quickly, and you have to do so many every single week just to advance the overall main story questline, again, it becomes extremely fatiguing. Another issue, I think, and we've got to say this, is crafting. Now, I'm not prepared to outright say that crafting has been harmful overall for Destiny 2. Certainly, relying purely on RNG with no protection of any way was extremely frustrating. For years, some of the most dedicated players couldn't get the weapons or the rolls they wanted just because of random luck, and that is extremely annoying. So introducing a protection against that in the form of crafting, I think overall could be a very good thing. But the way it's kind of laid out right now, and the way you acquire these craftable weapons, and the fact that all the seasonal weapons are craftable, it just means that, before, people might still be playing right now during this kind of dead time, trying to get the perfect god roll for a certain weapon. But now, once you get those 5 out of 5 red borders, you're done. And it's never been like that before. Other than obviously getting the complete perfect 5 out of 5 god roll, which was very rare. Often you'd get 4 out of 5 and you'd be happy, but you'd be, in the back of your mind kind of trying to get the perfect roll. But now, once you get those red borders, you're done. You are completely done. You can craft the perfect roll. Your gameplay has stopped. And so once you get all those craftable seasonal weapons, you have a definitive end date to the season. And there really hasn't been that before. But guys, another factor, and I think a really, really big one, is that there has been nothing going on for PvP. And I'm a PvE guy, so obviously I'm mainly concerned with PvE stuff, but I gotta feel for my PvP brethren. There's just nothing going on. They just started adding new maps after I think it was 900 days of no PvP maps. The modes are extremely slim. There isn't a proper ranking system in terms of actual rewards that PvP players want to see. All of that stuff has just been gutted, and I don't understand why. Destiny 2 does have an extremely dedicated PvP community. I mean, like, if you put up a how to do well in trials video, it pops off because people want to know this stuff. People have an interest in the PvP, but it's shocking how little attention Bungie gives it. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And I really think that is a big factor behind why we're seeing the player numbers so darn low, because actually some of the most dedicated players, the players that keep the player population high during these otherwise dead times, are the PvP players. These are the people that log on for trials every single weekend, but we're not seeing it. In fact, the trials numbers are some of the lowest they've ever been as well. So I think there's a direct correlation there. So, those are the main problems I've identified, but what do you guys think? Is there something I missed? Let me know in that comment section, but what can Bungie do to fix these? Well, I think number one, invest more in seasonal content. I think thankfully this problem might fix itself because next season with Season 19, there isn't a Subclass 3.0 remake. So again, a lot of development time was probably going into those, so I would expect next season we get a new exotic quest and stuff like that. If we don't, that's going to be a big problem. But additionally, I think Bungie needs to make sure that if you're going to ask us to replay these seasonal activities like Ketchcrash and Expedition so much, you need to make them more replayable, make them more diverse, make them different, change them halfway through the season, something to future-proof them a little bit better. But moving on from there, I think another thing is the craftable weapons. Maybe have only a few of the seasonal weapons be craftable, or perhaps introduced another different set of weapons that aren't craftable, give us something to chase. Again, next season, there is a dungeon, and we're gonna have to see how many of the weapons in there are craftable, but that could definitely give us an opportunity to try to grind for the god rolls. However, of course, the dungeon actually isn't included in next season. It's actually part of that dungeon pass that came out earlier that was $20. So yeah, maybe less confusing packs and different, expansions and DLCs and everything costs a different amount. That's a whole nother topic, but that's definitely leading to fatigue for a lot of players, I'm sure. But anyways, good weapons with good god rolls to give us a reason to go after. I mean, what happened to the seasonal weapons? Right now it's the Cry Mutiny grenade launcher. Nobody cares about those things. We had the Salvager Salvo that was so good, and then everything else just went off a cliff. Like, why can't we have good seasonal weapons, Bungie? Give us a reason to grind the game. Give me a reason to get to max rank in Strikes, Vanguard, or Gambit, or Crucible. Like, I don't understand that decision at all. But another thing that needs to be done is there needs to be an investment in PvP. It can't just be the same seasonal model with similar activities every single time. Introduce a completely new PvP game mode, something fun, a new ranking system, something that's only available as a reward through PvP. Give us a reason to play that huge part of the game, and invest in one of the most dedicated portions of your community. Oh, and one more thing, Bungie needs to invest in its quality assurance and testing. I know that sounds like a jerk thing to say coming from a non-developer, but my goodness, the amount of patches that came out recently that seemingly broke more things than they fixed. I mean, with Festival of the Lost, when it launched, a huge amount of people, myself included, couldn't even progress their quests. I know so many people that were playing other games that just kind of came back to try the new seasonal event, and as soon as they couldn't progress their quests, they dipped. All right, back to Modern Warfare, back to whatever, right? It just kills your motivation to play the game when you literally can't play the game properly. And I think that Bungie, you just got $3.6 billion with a B dollars in funding. I know it takes a while to implement changes and hire new people, but for goodness sakes, these patches can't be going out in the state that they are. I mean, you had a couple weeks there where sidearms were just absurd because they didn't nerf rangefinder when they were supposed to, stuff like that. If a nerf is intended for a patch, it needs to make it in for that patch. And again, I know me just saying, oh, do all these things for a very complicated game to a developer is definitely, again, coming off as a little bit entitled, but guess what? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because the average player is not going to care that it's a complicated game. They're going to see their quest not working and dip. And that's happening again and again and again, and it needs to be solved. I think that's something that absolutely needs to be invested in because it can't keep going on like this. Guys, what do you think? All right, am I completely off the mark? Is Destiny doing fine? Are there other things, again, you would want to see changed? Let me know in that comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, found it interesting. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.